Hello. So we're now moving into a concept called branching. And the first thing we need to understand before we can really get into branching is we have to understand a concept called Boolean expressions, or Boolean logic is another way of putting it. And basically what Boolean logic is the ability to compare two things and get a result. And you can get fancy and eventually compare lots of two things in different ways, and we'll talk about that towards the end of this section. But for right now, let's just take a look real quick and compare some things. So the first thing to notice is that I've got a bunch of assignments up here at the top where I'm assigning a bunch of variables. And then down here, I'm printing out comparisons. And the very first comparison that we'll be looking at here is the equality comparison. And I really want to draw your attention to this because it's probably the most common mistake when starting out in Boolean expressions. And notice that when I want to assign a value to a variable, I use one equal symbol. So x is now assigned to be 5. You can think of that one equal symbol as the word assigned. So x is assigned to 5, y is assigned to 10. Test 1 is assigned to the word hello. The double equals is asking is equal to. So this is checking if x is equal to y. So let's run, and we're just going to focus on these first two equalities here. So let's run our module. And we'll see we have false and we have true. We got an error down here. Don't worry about that. We're going to get there. And we're going to see why that's causing us some problems, and we're going to fix it. So first of all, we get false if we say, is x equal to y? Well, let's look. Is 5 equal to 10? No. So it says false. And that's really all Boolean logic is. So let's look at the next one. Is y equal to z? Well, they're both 10 up here. So we expect and we get true. All right, well, cool. Let's look at these next two then. So for these next two, we're looking for greater than or less than. And we're checking 5 and 10 for the values of x and y. So is 5 greater than 10? Nope. And so we get a false. Is x, which is 5, is 5 less than 10? We get true. Now, let's add another one in here. Let's check if y is greater than z, or if y is less than z. And if we've been paying attention in our math classes, we probably will have noticed that that's not true in either case, right? They're equal. So this sometimes gets students, though, because they get false even though it's the same value. So if you would like to, you can check if they are greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. And this will allow you to get the trues that you're probably expecting. So make sure you basically use the right comparison operator and everything will be good. And this works perfect for numbers. Numbers are great for this. However, when you start mixing in strings, you can get some weird things. Like, for example, I tried to check if the string hello is greater than the number 5. And Python's really not happy with me for this one, right? Unfortunately, it tells me right here in the error, it says, hey, this is not supported between instances of strings and ints. So that's not going to work. So let's get rid of that. Let's burn that. And let's check these other ones. This still should be a little weird looking, right? I'm checking two strings to see if they're greater than one another. I mean, equality, maybe we can understand, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to do greater than with strings, right? Well, it may not make a lot of sense, but Python's perfectly happy with it. And in fact, it's going to say that's not true because if test 1 is hello and test 2 is howdy, what it's going to do is it's going to look at every letter in order. So the H's are the same. That doesn't help. Here we see is E and O as the second letters, and it's going to ask, is E greater than O? And it's in fact going to ask if the ASCII code for E is greater than O. Well, they're in order, fortunately, alphabetical order. So O is actually considered greater than E. So this is going to be false. And similarly, howdy and world, the H and W should be popping up. And in this case, we say is 2 greater than 3. Well, W is much later than H, so it's a bigger number. So that's not true either. So that also gets us a false. And finally, we have some trues here because we're checking some equality of strings. And this is the most likely thing you're going to use for Boolean checks for strings. Is this string equal to this string? And we should be a little careful here because watch what happens if I make this a lowercase w. Suddenly that's no longer true, right? This is our false right here. That's because remember we're looking at that ASCII value, right? And uppercase and lowercase have different ASCII values. We'll see eventually with strings how we could check regardless of case. But for right now, we're sort of stuck. And the last Boolean operator I like to mention is the not equals to. And this works for numbers too. We could go in here and also print if x is not equal to y. And that's happy as well. The bang equal or the exclamation point equal is just checking if something is not equal to something else. And that's really it for Boolean operators. We'll see why they're so important in the next lesson.